It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays. And today we are talking about how to have meaningful conversations quickly. This is a companion piece from Manly Mondays this week. It's also something of a lead into It's Not Therapy this Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We're going to talk about owning your ish this week. Just so people know, just to be a bit proud of myself, the show had one of the highest ratings in the time slot ever on its premiere. And it sustained through the hour. There were no peaks and valleys. So people didn't sample and tune out. They stayed for the whole show. So that's really good. Thank you, everybody who has been supporting the show. I greatly appreciate it. Help support this channel. Continue to support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Or buy a one-time coffee Leanna Care session for people who could use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Again, we need 3 per week. We need more than 3 per week if I'm going to expand to the other people who need it. But let's get to the topic. How to have meaningful conversations quickly. And this is a tie-in to what I was saying on Manly Mondays about getting to know people before you put yourself in vulnerable situations. And conversation, as I say on effective conversation, as I say on It's Not Therapy, is the art of listening twice before you talk once. And what that means is most people think about conversations as knowing what to say. And the truth is that if you actually listen effectively, that will tell you what to say. And you can have an entire conversation where someone walks away thinking you're fascinating just by the questions you ask. And I mean, okay, easy for me to say, professional interviewer of 20 years, right? Did it for a living in multiple different circumstances. But that's the thing. I found that you gotta know how to frame your questions, but, you know, interviewing a politician or a, regular person is not that much different than interviewing an actor or a musician. It's all about asking meaningful questions that get them to reveal interesting things about themselves. And most conversation when you're first getting to know someone tends to be really low value. So what do you do for work? Where are you from? Where's your family from? All this BS small talk stuff that really tells you nothing. You might have a point of commonality where someone's from, but what I tend to get, if I'm not, especially in the US, I say I'm from the Toronto area. Oh yeah, I knew someone from the Toronto area once. So-and-so. You know him? Toronto's a city of millions and millions of people. Why would I know them? It's amazing how often that happens because people don't know how to have meaningful conversations or they don't care to. But if you're looking to make business contacts or basically screen someone to see if this is someone worth trying to trust, having meaningful conversations quickly is an important skill to learn. And meaningful conversations is less about the information a person is volunteering, and it's more about why this is important to them. And I tend to use superheroes in Judge of Cthulhu. I use superheroes, Disney princesses, different metaphors to get people talking about what's important to them. One of my icebreaker questions, because most people know who Batman is, I ask them who their favorite villain is. Because you can learn a lot about a person based on that, right? And, the least informative one is the Joker, because that's the one people know from movies, and they might not actually know, the Cloud Prince of Crime Joker. It might be Jack Nicholson from the Batman movie, but it can start a conversation that way. Because if somebody says, And the other day, a guy said poison ivy, and I'm like, that's really interesting. I've never had a guy say poison ivy is their absolute favorite Batman villain before, and it's like, okay, this is intriguing, and I'm not going to betray what was said after that because it said a lot about a person. Similarly, you talk to people about who their favorite Marvel character is. I mean, I always feel like I'm giving away a lot when I talk about who my favorite characters are. Now, most people don't pick up on it because they don't listen and they don't go, okay, what's the point in common here? What is important? And you can sometimes ask, I like to offer things and I say, totally speculating here. What do you think about this? And taking that risk because, people like being empowered when you give, did I get that right? Or am I totally off base? People like having the control to be able to say, no, you're right, or no, you're not right. Because people are so used to being judged without the ability to correct that potentially false judgment. And so giving a little bit of yourself that way allows people to give a lot of themselves. And if you can't get anything out of a person in a conversation like that, I mean, it may just be they're seriously socially awkward, but it might actually mean that there isn't a lot there. And I actually started using Disney princesses because, shocker, I have a few Leanna Cares clients who don't know superheroes. I panicked for a minute. Was like, what do I do? This has always worked before. Okay, Disney, no, Disney princess. And it works just as well because each Disney princess has sort of a firm character and a lot of them are weirdos. I pointed this out to one client. They were like, what? No. I said, think about the opening song in Beauty and the Beast, what a puzzle to the rest of us. She's nothing like the rest of us. So different from the rest of us is Belle. Belle's a weirdo. Ariel combs her hair with a fork. And what kind of weird someone's favorite Disney princess is tells you a lot about them. And that's another one that, a lot of people have seen. And as long as you sort of know media that somebody is interested in, you can use that to create an informative conversation in some cases in under 20 minutes, but definitely in under an hour, enough time to have lunch, and that's pretty much it. And a lot of people don't do this, and the technology we use to meet each other now don't do this. It's amazing to me how many people decide whether they're going to give someone a chance based on whether they matched on Tinder. You're letting a machine decide for you whether someone's worth your time. Now, if somebody says that to me, it's like, okay, next, I'm not interested in this person because I'm not going to let a machine do my thinking that way. Those algorithms are not. Those algorithms are designed to sort of give you things in common when you first meet or hook up. Not that anybody cares about anything in common, but how attractive you are for that physically. And that's something I don't relate to either. If somebody's a terrible human being, it doesn't matter how physically attractive they are. And I'm not interested in what most people find conventionally attractive anyway. So, but yeah, those conversations, those meaningful conversations, we're not just not taught it in this day and age. We're actively discouraged from having them. But it's amazing how validated people feel when you actually have a meaningful conversation. And it takes practice to do it. It takes practice to do it and have it seem effortless. But it does really help meet cool people. And we could always use more cool people in our lives. And not every person you meet is, somebody you're going to stay in touch with. But it's good to practice having conversations. And that was something I needed a lot of hard knocks to realize, is that because I was one of those people that everything was results and everything was long-term results, because that's how academics trained me to be. And it's so funny to think of myself as that now, because the nature of my job means that, of my various jobs, means that you could work really intensely with someone for a few months or, a year and then never hear from them again. And that can really be depressing the first few times it happens. That, oh, you thought you had this intense connection with somebody, but it was all work, And then I realized, yeah, we talked really intensely about work, and we made jokes because of work, and we had coping mechanisms because of work. But did we really know each other as people? No, not really. So why am I bothered that, because I wasn't actually listening. I wasn't listening to what was missing. And I'm the sort of person, I don't really care where someone came from. I don't care what they were, necessarily what their first major was, or I care who the person is now. And once I get a sense of who the person is now, then I find their personal history interesting, because, I get to see how, their origin story, their superhero origin story made them the person they are today. All of a sudden, their personal history is relevant in a way that it wouldn't be if I didn't know who they are now. But truthfully, the person right in front of you is the important element. And asking those questions that get to core values and hopes and dreams and common interests. Hopes and dreams are more important than common interests, because you can like the same thing for completely different reasons, And that's where the core values come in. It's amazing how many people in one-on-one Leanna Care sessions don't actually understand the importance of core values. And they're essential. Your concept of right and wrong, your concept of fairness, your concept of the mechanisms in the world that make you comfortable and uncomfortable, essentially your meat space gameplay style. That's essential. One, so that you're not misunderstood as often, unless somebody's deliberately twisting your words. But also because, there are some people I respect very much for what they do. They are really good at what they do. We have totally different worldviews. We have totally different core values. And so it's better for me to stay arm's length from that person so we can preserve a really, really functional working relationship than to try to be their friend and be like, ugh, and have to get away because I feel like I need to shower, because it's not that they're not a moral person. They're not an ethical person. Their morals and ethics are just completely different from mine. And I believe there are many paths to God. And I can intellectually recognize that there are, I don't think I know it all. So intellectually, I'm like, okay, there are equally valid paths to being a good person. I just can only hear about some of them so much because either I've had a really bad experience with it, it brings back a really bad memory, or I just don't agree with the particular philosophical point. And I think the person's a perfectly fine person, but I don't want to get into it because I'm going to have a really strong reaction that that person may not necessarily be able to take. Right? Because that's one thing about me. I love a good debate. And people often misconstrue my eagerness for the debate as anger or aggression. And so all my close friends like that particular type of passion about me. They also understand certain things like my sense of time is not great. One of the lasting symptoms of PTSD I have is I'm not very good at passage of time, remembering dates, remembering birthdays, remembering, and if it's not in my calendar, I will probably forget it. And it's not that I don't care about people. I just have no sense of the passing of the seasons. Trauma does that to the brain. It's one of the things I've tried to get better at. Perhaps my brain will heal more with time, but for now, I just have to compensate by everything goes in the calendar. And I've still not been good about putting people's birthdays in my calendar and setting them to repeat every year. I don't know why I haven't done that. It's one of those mental blocks, but some people get very, very, very upset if you don't remember stuff like that. Other people just know it's me and they're cool with it and they understand why. If that's something that somebody is a super stickler for, they're going to be pretty upset with me a lot because I'm terrible at that stuff. And it's not something I'm proud of, and it's not something I dismiss. It's just something I need patience with because I can't help what certain things in my past did to my brain any more than I can help what, an autoimmune disease does to my hands and my ability to wear jewelry. My blood runs too acidic. So, if it's a special occasion, I'll put on a necklace, but I was tired of the necklace I wore all the time turning black. It's a bunch of things combined. Rings make my fingers turn black. I got sick of it. So I just stopped wearing jewelry except during short bursts. Everybody has things like that. And those are the sorts of things that if you don't sync up with somebody that way, it's nobody's fault. It just is. And that's a mistake a lot of people make. They're so interested in a specific type of relationship, a specific type of outcome, that they don't learn how to put people in your lives in the way that's the most rewarding for both of you. And sometimes the best relationship you can have with a person is sort of mid-distance. And that's one of the things you figure out when you have meaningful conversations that don't, get too heavy too fast. When you figure out, oh, okay, this person's interesting. I think they're probably a good person. There's certain things about them. It's just going to be oil and water. All right. Don't try to be besties with this person. It won't end well. And that's something I wish I'd learned sooner because one-on-one, I really like people. It's a little understood thing about being an introvert. Introverted people really like one-on-one time. We like those small groups and yeah, okay, we need our alone time. We just don't like really big crowds where, I prefer meeting a friend for lunch or 2 or 3 friends for dinner or something like that, as opposed to a party with 100 people where it's super loud and you don't really get to talk to anybody. I know that about myself, if somebody's a big partier, I may go out every so often, but if they don't meet me halfway, well, that's just me constantly doing what they want to do and never doing what, I like to do. And that's not a balanced relationship. So that's another thing you can get from meaningful conversations and keep in mind. And, I find it easier to remember, oh yeah, that person, really likes Winter Soldier, or really likes, shoot, I'm blanking on a bunch of the characters that some people really like, but I remember people's favorite characters more than it's like, oh yeah, that happened to them and they're this Myers-Briggs profile or whatever. That's just what I remember because it's relevant to my brain. So that, that, and they usually wear t-shirts that remind me, oh yeah, right, that. It's a memory help. But listening is far more, and asking the right questions is far more important than figuring out what to say. And the other thing about figuring out what to say is if you're so busy figuring out the next thing you're going to say, you're not really listening to what a person is telling you. And we all do that from time to time, especially when somebody's really upset and we're struggling to figure out what to say. It is more important than ever to really, really listen, play it back. And you could play it back. You don't want to leave the person in silence, but you can do, okay, let me make sure I have this. Is this what you're saying? It gives them a chance to say yes or no. And that process gives you a chance to go, all right, really digest what the person is telling you. Because that's 80% of knowing what to say next. Because, the next step is just empathizing with the person. Like, well, that sounds like fun. Or, and sometimes I'll say, well, that sounds like fun. And somebody's like, no, it really wasn't. And then they launch into this whole crazy story, and it's a good story. And, that story I remember. But yeah, it's really easy to know what to say if you're meaningfully engaging, really listening, and going in focused on no outcome other than a really good conversation. Because if you're trying to steer something in a certain direction, you're gonna miss cues unless you're a really good closer. That's what makes a good closer, though, that they go and, yeah, okay, the number of guys like, yeah, I just want to talk, because that's the mindset you have to go in. You have to go in with a chill mindset. No. People who make a lot of money for a living, they want something that's going to make them money. They're not just there to talk. They're looking for an investment, but they're priming themselves to not want it so badly that they miss potential problems. And so they put themselves in that mindset, I don't know if any of that helped. Hopefully it did. Looking forward to your questions. This is going to be an eventful Feedback Friday, I think. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching. Be well and listen to It's Not Therapy. Link in the description box. 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time tomorrow, Thursday. Thanks for watching and be well.